Chamol al masecho v'sisimach b'masecho v'yoymeru lecho choyesecho b'tzadekcho amusecho.
It is a tremendous privilege for our community to hear words of Lchizuk from Harav Yaakov Bender Shlita, Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshivas Darchei Torah in Far Rockaway. We would like to express our sincerest hakaras hatoiv to the Rosh Yeshiva Shlita for taking the time out of his evening to address our tzibur in Toronto. In the name of the Toronto Community Rabbonim Shlita and the entire tzibur, it is a great kavod to introduce Harav Yaakov Bender Shlita.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Heber. First of all, I would like to say that it's a great kavod for me to have the schus of being in the same program as Agoyin Agadol of Shlomo Shlita. I can say it's very hard to say always the greatest pasuk we have in our dara today. And I could be speaking next to him is a very chashuv thing for me. I do want to say, I remember his shver Rabbi Rivlin, Zechatzadek Levracha, Rabbi Rivlin used to sit next to my father in the Mir Minyan, 7 o'clock shachris every day. And I remember the excitement. He came in the morning. That's how old I'm getting. He came in the morning, the excitement. I took an Adam, Shlomo Miller. And it goes back about, including my cheshbon, at least 60 years ago. And it was a special time around 60 years ago. And to be able to sit here now, it's very chashuv. I want to go on Meiser, Rabbi said. Meiser. Start out with a Meiser. I learned, with the year my father was nifter, I went to Philadelphia Yeshiva as a young bacher. Went to Philadelphia Yeshiva, and I was a little bit homesick. A little bit homesick. My father very much wanted me to succeed in Philadelphia. And he wrote me, in those days, speaking on the phone was very, very expensive, long distance. Cost a lot of money. I remember we had a Zayd in Eretz Yisrael. We couldn't speak to him on the phone. It was $20 for 3 minutes. He couldn't hear even well. My father wrote me letters. Michtavim he wrote to me. He wrote me 3 or 4 letters a week during the Zman I was in Philadelphia. Unfortunately, it ended up being a month. My father was nifter suddenly. My shvager, Reb Chaim Epstein, he did the Reb Shlomo, Bad L'chaim Tov Maruchim, suggested I stay with my mother. We did it for the next 8 years. Next 8 years, I was sort of my mother's. She was my best friend for 8 years. I lived at home with her. I went back and forth on the subways to Mir Yeshiva. But during the time of those letter writing, one night, my father was nifter November 15th. I'm making the dates in English because it's important. The Chatbei is November 15th. On November 9th, there was a massive blackout in the Northeast. A riziga blackout in the Northeast. Everything was blacked out completely. You couldn't see. You couldn't go anywhere. It was people remember the blackout for what it was. I want to tell you how I remember the blackout. Sure, the blackout was a scene. It was the first major blackout that we had in this area. And people remember the blackout. I want to tell you about how I remember the blackout. Those letters that my father wrote me, since I probably was a little bit homesick, I saved them all. I have those letters. One of those letters is written, I don't know the Hebrew date, November 9th, the night of the blackout. And I have that letter laying in a drawer here in my desk. The letter says, my entire zon, we spoke Yiddish, he writes me, my entire zon, there's a blackout now going on where we are right now. And I feel I have to write you the letter anyways. And there's some drippings of wax on the letter. The Ava, this is November 9th, the Ava that I felt from my father in that letter when I got it in Philadelphia is such a treasure to me today that looking back on the blackout, people were always busy. As a couple of years ago with the blackout made one thing to me. Because November 15th, my father was nifta. 6 days later, the blackout meant that my tata, Zechrona Levracha, felt it was important to me to write that letter. So when people talk about the blackout, they talk about when on the electric. They couldn't do anything. No, to me it meant what my father was. So looking back at that blackout, I think it's very behechrich. I was just to speak about the idea of COVID and what it did. Behechrich to us to look back at a year and a half of COVID. It's not over yet. Be careful still a little bit. And say, look at Klal Yisrael. Look what we did, particularly the city of Toronto. Again, I don't know if all the stories about Toronto, what we heard, are true or not true, but certainly Toronto went through a harder time than we in the States. But we went through a hard time in the States also. They opened the yeshiva, they closed the yeshiva. They opened the yeshiva, they closed the yeshiva. And yet, Klal Yisrael came through in shining colors. The yeshiva stayed open. We did everything in our power after the first few months. We couldn't have minyanim the first few months, but afterwards we had minyanim with shverikite. It was difficult, and we came through big. So looking back at COVID, I think it's our children have to know. Really, this was more of a drasha that I gave B'Shas Ma'is through Zoom to our own parent body. Tell our children that they're learning on the phones or on Zoom with their rebbeim. The Welt said, my father once told me that when they showed the Chafetz Chaim, they told him at the first radio, and they explained to him there are channels. He said, yeah, one day, the Chafetz Chaim said one day they'll use all those channels, for different shurim on those channels. It will be kachim, it will be nazikin, etc., etc., etc. I think that's the hechrich, the ruchnius of COVID has to come through. The chesed, the tova of Klal Yisrael. What people didn't do to help each other out. Visiting the elderly, people who couldn't leave the house. The amount of food in our area was delivered to people. The amount of chesed tova. What the chaverim and atzala kind of the Tamid Chachamim. They called people to learn with them on the phone. The Torah that went on the shverikite. So next time I told the children, you have a headache and it's hard to learn, think about 5 years ago or 10 years ago when they didn't let us learn. The yeshiva was closed. And then they finally said you could learn, but not in the yeshiva. So we learned on the phone. And then we learned in backyards, outdoors, because the sound of Torah can't stop. So if there's a lesson to us of COVID, it has to be that Klal Yisrael will overcome everything. There's nothing we can't overcome. There's a hest upon us, certainly today's day and age. I'm not the one to decide yet, but Shlomo, there's certainly a hest upon him in today's day and age. But went on just in the last 3-4 months since Miron, the tragedy of Miron, and then Stalin, Ukraine, Denver, son, and the floods in New York. It's hard to imagine. I was coming back from Lakewood from a mitzvah chassid that night. I could hear the flooding was shreklach. And the hest upon him is nothing short of incredible. What's taken place? There's a hest upon him. I think we have to say the only way to open up the hest upon him is to show what Klal Yisrael did during that tkufa, that shveret tkufa called COVID, the shveret Zeitin. And I think Toronto could be very, very proud, particularly. I'm not trying to patronize any of you, but what we heard about Toronto, how difficult it was. You have to, all of you who are on this phone, have to realize that the lesson and the example that you gave your children, durch zu machen the shveret Zeitin of COVID. I don't know what it was like with people dying in New York. There were 3,000 people, Rahman al-Islam. 3,000, that's what I heard from Yankee Mai, the head of Misaskim told me. There were over 3,000 Frumma Erlich Yidden that were nifted between Purim and a couple of weeks after Pesach in the New York City metropolitan area, which includes Lakewood and Muncie and Squaretown and Monroe, and of course New York City, so on and so forth. And Klal Yisrael went on. I'm involved a little bit with Samchenu, the organization of Samchenu, which is for Almanos. There are people from Toronto that come there every year when we have a convention. There's an organization called Links for Yisaimais and a division called Shleimis Club for Yisaimim. They have these links, and Shleimis Club told me this year, I'm talking about a year after COVID began, there were 371 new Yisaimais in the ages of 12 and 21. 371 new Yisaimais only, ages of 12 and 21. We have a Bacha Kid Yeshiva this year. We came to Brachim this year. He's doing wonderfully. His first yard site is Yom Kippur. His father was a young man in Lakewood. Chamol on the left. And you know what? He's learning wonderfully. And there's 371 Yisaimas are doing wonderfully. There were 81 new Almanis in Samchenu this year from COVID. Come out all from COVID. And yet Klal Yisrael came through with such magnificent numbers. That, I think, should be the lesson. Hashem sent us a very, very hard pill. He wanted it. That was hest upon him. Sent us a very, very difficult pill. And we could say collectively, not on the backs of those who became Almanis Yisayim, of course, then we have to help for Shtetzach. But collectively say, we overcame. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent us, we overcame. And that means that in the future, when Chas v'Shalom there's an Ikov, there are bumps in the road. There are mountains sometimes in the road. We have to be able to say that we can overcome. I was thinking to myself once, Haster, the Gmar asks, famous Kasha, Esther Menatera Menayim. How do we know Esther? Every single person's name is Marumas, the Torah. The Gains, the Gain used to say that Evan Shlema, Tialacha, Evan Shlema, Evan Elio Ben Shlema. Everybody's name is Torah. So where's the name of Haman? The Gmar says, Hamina Eitz. This Aaron has a terrorist on why it's the Shachas of Hamina Eitz. Together, the Rebbe of Shlema, Aaron says why it's Hamina Eitz. But let's talk about Esther for a minute. So the parsha we just laying on Shabbos. That's Esther ben Atayra. Esther lived in a time of Hester upon him. The Megillah does not have the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Shem Hashem is not mentioned once HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Chazal say it's a Shrek L'Chaklala. Hester upon him is Shrek L'Chaklala. It's Yadu, a famous word, Chedush Yerim. Hashem asks that the Nachash was cursed. Al G'chaim Chatelech, V'yafar Teichel Kol Yom, you'll eat only Afar. In fact, Chedush Yerim, you do it to Kasha, that's a Klala. Every Baal Chai in the world has to worry about food. The Welt says that an ant who lives normally for 6 months has hundreds of years of food saved up, or whatever, or months of days or years of food saved up because she's worried about, the ant is worried about her food. So the Nachash was told, that's a klala. The Nachash was told by Kadosh Baruch Hu, you have no shaykhs to me anymore. Don't come to me. Here's your oichel, yeh gesundheit. I'm done with you. And that was the klala. Klala was the shaykhs of Kadosh Baruch Hu was broken off from the Nachash. He lost his feet, crawled around his belly. Here's your offer, gesundheit. I think so. Hester is panai. The idea of Hester panim is shreklach. Terrible thing, shreklach. But think myself, maybe we could say this now these days. Maybe this Hester panim. What happened to Klal Yisrael in these months is a gewaldige Hester panim. A gewaldige Hester panim. Efshe kemazogen. Efshe. If Shlomo will be masking, Efshe kemazogen. The ibadatim, I'll destroy you forever, is worse. There's no chance. Hester panim is, Hakadosh Baruch Hu is saying, I'm only hiding. I'm hiding. Dirshu Hashem bi matzai, kra'u b'yasetamid, I'm hiding, find me. L'mashal. How do we know if he's just hiding, he doesn't want to be found? I once met a Jew, many years ago, who told me how he hid from the Nazis, Yimach Shvam. He told me he didn't tell his closest Yedidim where he was hiding. They used to meet up once in a while in the shtuck, wherever they were hiding. He didn't tell anybody the hiding place. No one was told where the hiding place is. Canaanish. Well, he was afraid someone might tell somebody and it's over. It's lost. It's gone. The shtuck. He didn't want that to happen. He didn't tell anybody. Then there's a child that plays hide and seek with his father, right? Child runs outside, hides behind the tree. The father is searching. He can't find him, hide and seek. Suddenly the kid says to his father, you can't find me. What's the pshat? You're hiding. What do you want to be found? Teretz says the child is hiding temporarily. He wants to show how good he was hiding. And you couldn't find me, but he doesn't want his father to go away. Oh, no. He wants his father to know. So how do we know what's the real hiding that doesn't want to be found? How do we know the hiding that he doesn't mind being found? If the person is Megala, that he's hiding. If he's not Megala, he doesn't want to be found. Like by the Nazis, Yimach Shvam. But a child, he wants to be found. Hakadosh Baruch Hu is saying to us, I'm going to go into hiding. Find me. I'm here. And that's our job, but the Erev Yom Kippur. To say, Kadosh Baruch Hu, we want you. We're looking for you. He's not hiding. He's hiding because he's upset with us. But here he's waiting for us. He's waiting for us. He wants to see us. He wants to make sure that we're looking for him. Everyone's zen. Haster, I'm only hiding for you. And I think that's the lesson we have to give to our children. It's hard. The younger kids, of course, there's different madregas of chinuch that we can give. There's all kinds of levels of chinuch that we can give. It depends who it is. Younger children, you have to make them feel good about themselves. As a child gets older, it's different a little bit. A child gets older, he's able to take more. When do you take a child to Levaya? You don't take a child to Levaya. It depends psychologically. But I think that lesson, even to second and third and fourth graders, can be given. Remember last year, we couldn't learn, and you know what? We learned. It wasn't easy. The kids who have ADD and ADHD, they couldn't sit. Us, the adults, it wasn't easy to learn on the phone. Not easy to learn on Zoom. Not easy. But we, Klal Yisrael, showed how really easy it really is. Not easy, but we can overcome. It's our thing. If you do I don't know how long I have to speak, but the famous story of the Chasim Harav, the Chasim Rebbe, He spoke the first year after the liberation, 1945. The Kleisberg Rebbe was someone who buried, you can't say buried, who lost 11 children and a wife, his first wife. The two Kleisberg Rebbes today, the one here in America, the one in Israel, are from the second wife. I grew up in Williamsburg. I lived on corner Hooper Street, and then I moved to U Street, between Hooper and Hughes, with the Kleisberg Yeshua. I said, I went to Yeshiva, I have Shabbos over in the morning. Look what the Kleisberg Rebbe built up. All the other, he lost 11 children. You know, you do a story when the Blusheva Rebbe came to Menachem Avul, Reb Shnei Zechasadik Levracha, when he lost his son Reb Meir. And the Blusheva Rebbe had gesagt to Reb Shnei, at least you have a caver to go daven at. He himself said he does not have a caver to go daven at. He doesn't know where his children were. The Kleisberg Rebbe had no idea where 11 children were killed. I remember as a child thinking in 1967, the Lchizuk Rebbe sent his wife and children to America when the threat, when those remember, 1967, the threat of war, imminent war, and people were running from Israel. It was a sakana. The United Nations pulled away the troops to Egypt, whatever. I don't know the whole history, that's not important. So I remember somebody was being critical, said, the Lchizuk Rebbe lives in Israel. He's the leader of a flock. He's sending his wife and kids away. I was a bacha. I went over to the person. I said, with all due respect, you're older than me, but I want to tell you one thing. He lived through a loss of a wife and 11 children. You are going to say to him, why are you sending your wife and children out of Eretz Yisrael? How dare you? I said it nicely. How dare you? And the Kleisberg Rebbe was standing in the DP camps, the koyach that he was in the DP camp, the grace of koyach. And he stands up and he says to them, and he opens up a machzer on Yom Kippur, Rabbi say. Tomorrow night is Yom Kippur, and he stands up in his machzer. And he says to the Chassidim over there, he says to them, this machzer is for you, it's for us. I don't think so, he says. You could say, Ashamnu? We did Averis. What Averis could we do in the concentration camps? We lost everything. Mishpachas. Parnos, everything we lost. Ashamnu, Bagadnu, we rebelled. Who did we rebel after? He said, we could say such things. He says, Gazalnu, we stole. What can we steal? And if somebody ever picked up an extra piece of bread so he could live, he could sustain himself. We're going to clap al chait. This machzer is not for us, and he closed it. He closed the machzer. All these sabrachane yidden. He closed the machzor. He says, there's one taina. Some of us gave up. We can't do it. We can't overcome. He says, that's a taina. Everybody sitting in this room, he said then, could build himself up again. This Rabbi now Yeshiva was born to his father's second wife, by the sister of his first wife. He once told me, it's not question. He says, I have 5 siblings who were killed by the Nazis. I didn't know them. He says to his Chassidim over there, he says to them, our job is to rebuild. And if we did one avla, if we could say one ashamnu, it's not believing. If there's a lesson from COVID, is look what that generation did. The infrastructure of New York. Yes, the infrastructure of Canada, of Montreal or Toronto, the infrastructure of every major city in the United States, built up by mostly Hungarian Jewry. Polish Jewry, unfortunately, was wiped out. They were Zeicha, half of the Jewry of Hungary lived. The Rosh was trying to wipe them out as fast as he can with Auschwitz. He tried. Weissman was begging them, bomb the tracks, but he tried, but they were left over, these people. And these Sabrach and Benchen, look what they built up for us. The gewaltige infrastructure of Yadus, Hacharedus of the United States and Canada. Who built it? These people. This is the Kleisberg Rebbe said to them. He said to them, we lived through a lot more than COVID, obviously. We lived through such a tkufa. Hazah Shveret tkufa. And we didn't know where we were going now. It was the first year that DPA, mostly people were there for a year to 2 years. This was after the war, the first Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, he's saying this, see them. We're going into Yom Kippur, we could say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, look how we overcame. The yeshivas kept functioning, the shuls kept functioning, Yadus kept functioning. And that's the lesson we must take for ourselves and for our children. That's the lesson. That anybody, if he puts his mind to it, you could find the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Dirshu Hashem b'matzei. Kra'u b'yosei karev. He's karev. That's the karev that speaks about nitzavim. Ki karev elecha hadava ma'od. It's there. Rashi says, I feel you have to go up a shemayim. If you have to go up a shemayim, you got to climb up there. Chazal. But it's there for us. And that's the lesson. I say to all of you, and I say to myself, there are hard days. There are difficult days. There are very, very difficult days that are hard to overcome, especially when we just live through. The elderly. But on the other hand, the chesed and the Tova, there was a couple here in Lakewood. I know the couple who lived next door with a whole family, lived next door to an old couple, a widow who lost her husband. I know who they are. I know the people. They don't give me a shit to say their name. I know Mamishu, they are friends of ours that are Mechatanim with us. So maybe some of you go figure it out. One of our Mechatanim. So she lost her husband. And she's going to be herself. This was a year ago, Pesach, not that she's going to be herself. A woman alone. So they went and they called up the children of this almana. Hear what a young couple goes and does. And tell us what the minhagim were, that your father, how he conducted himself at the Seder. Tell me the Nigunim. And they taught this couple the Nigunim of what the old man was nifta. The old man was nifta. What he sang by the Seder, what he did at the Seder. And they went in next door and they invited the old woman, the old almana. Hear what Klal Yisrael is. They invited the almana, that this almana should open her windows, the house next door to each other. She'll open her windows, they'll open their windows, and they'll sing. How did the story come out? I don't think how it came out. Because this almana called her children after Shabbos. You're not going to believe what happened to me. My next door neighbors, the family, we'll call them Goldsteins, the Goldsteins. You know what they did? They opened their window. And every niggin they sang was Mamish Tati's Nigunim. Could you imagine? She says to her children, everyone in Nigunim. What she didn't know, what I found out is that the room that was next door to her window was really a bedroom. This couple went and moved out all their bedroom furniture and moved in a table and chairs to the bedroom and feared their Seder in the bedroom just to look like a dining room. So they could be Mahana, this almana living alone and can't see anybody with less COVID. That's the lessons for us, what we could do. When the chips are down and the going gets rough, that's the lessons for us. That's what we have to inculcate into our kindlech, our children. Nothing will stop us. Dear Shu Hashem b'matzah, he's hiding, and we'll find him. Maybe we'll be zeicher to a shnas gula Yeshua, a year that will sit like a Mashiach Tzidkenu, and we can proudly say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent things our way. It wasn't easy, and we overcame. May your whole kehila and our kehila, ganz Klal Yisrael, be helped with Hashem to a wonderful year. Thank you for the opportunity of speaking to you, and the chus of being next to Reb Shlomo. Should be zeicher. Everybody, those mishpachas in Yeshua's, only helfen werden. Norm and Siyata Dishmaya, with bracha v'atzlachim, and kol tov at kil b'shiloi. Erev Yameinu, amen v'yamein.
Amen. Thank you, Rosh Yeshiva Shlita. Your words of Lchizuk have given us much strength at this awesome time of the year and have left us with an everlasting impression. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu grant you many long and healthy years of Arbatzas HaTorah v'Yiras Shamayim, and may you continue to have much nachas and many simchas from your mishpacha, your talmidim, and all of Klal Yisrael. We are extremely fortunate to have the schus and kavod to hear words of Esairis and divrei bracha from Meirenu, the Rosh Kollel, Harav Hagoyin Reb Shlomo Miller Shlita. It is a great kavod to call upon the Rosh Kollel to address our tzibur.
Shus Rabbi Bender spoke such wonderful words. I'll make it very brief. I'm not from the big speakers. You know, we're all suffering from this COVID. We thought it would last a year, and a second year. Now, you know, how many years it's going to last? It will always last. They have no idea. What's going on here? Remember, they call it COVID-19. COVID-19. I said, you know what COVID-19 comes from? The Mishnah says, "Ein oimdim lispal until COVID Rosh," and there are 19 brachas in Shemona Esrei. So we have COVID-19. If I learn the 19 brachas and we'll daven with COVID Rosh, 19 brachas, they'll stop the other COVID-19. No, but we felt on the tefillah. Remember, this makkah of COVID and it affected everyone. It's a makkah, not just in Medina, it's a makkah against the world. Terrible makkah against the world. In Rambam state, in Choshuva, that there are three types of dinim. There's a din where the whole world is needed, whole world, then each Medina separately, and then each yochid. What's the say? Which comes first? The din of the yochid or the din of the Medina, or the din of the whole world? So remember, we say in the Sana Toikiv, first, there's a din on the tzibur. How many people are going to die this year in the whole world? Each nation, how many Yidden are going to go back from the belt this year? How many new children will be born? That's the Kollel. Then from this amount that are going to be born, each individual. Now, some individual will be zoich to live, some not. But first, you have to have a mitzvah, a quota system. How many will die? And how many will live? It's a din of the tzibur. How many? Then we say, who is going to live? Mi yichya mi yoms. This COVID machla is a din on the whole tzibur. Goes over real. It was there. How many people are going to die from it? The who and who comes later. Like I said, if you have a Shas Muhammad, Ma'is Muhammad Shalom Muhammad, many people are going to die. So to be nitzel in a Zman Muhammad, you have to have a lot more Chasim to be saved in Zman Muhammad. If it's not Zman Muhammad, Zman Shalom, more people remain alive. You don't need somebody Chasim to remain alive. Now this thing, why the Rosh made this Gzera of Tzibur, the Ram says that if the Rav Tzibur is Rav Chayvus, the whole world is destroyed. It says a pasuk, Hashem kiraba roas ha'adam. It's too much the roas ha'adam. Emcha, I'm going to destroy the whole world. Emcha. So we see if there's Rav Chayev, the Rosh can destroy the world. Apeladik Rambam, Pliatzuma. More you have a kash Ram forget something more. Here Ram forget from a pasuk. The pasuk that when there's Rav Chayev Emcha is before the Mabul. After the Mabul, there was the Shua. He will never destroy the world. He made a Shua. So you bring a Ram's being a raya from that pasuk before the Mabul, before the Shua, that if the Rav Chayev, the Baruch will destroy the world, but the Baruch made a Shua, he's not going to destroy the world anymore. More Barichas another time, same, but Amir Pshat says in Rambam. Chatas Pshat in Rambam. The halacha of Rav Chayev, the world is Rav Chayev. The halacha of the world is Rav Chayev. The world can have no existence of Rav Chayev. So why is the world Chayev? We have so many Averis nowadays. Avodah Zorah, the Epicurus, how about Shreit from Epicurus, like all the universities? They don't believe in Brias Oilam. They think you're crazy if you believe in there's a better Oilam. Right? Then when Gilarayas, the matter the Tova the Kazakhstan, the Grisk Tovas made officially it's legal. Right? Shvichas Damim, they make abortions, it's Shvichas Damim. All the various they do and make it legal, I feel. Terrible Zach. So it should be Rav Chayev. How's the world exist? And the difference nowadays and before the Mabul, there was a Gvaldi Zman Toiv. Everything was wonderful. There was plenty, no problems. There's no problems in life. So it came to a Zman of Rav Chayev. After the Mabul, Rabbi Shlomo is not going to destroy the world. What did he do? Hagaboim Marzirin Todir B'choyoim Nishroim Min Odam Mitayter Shlom Mitayter. There are Seder Umgus. Terrible things happen. And that takes off part of the Rav Chayev. He collects, they can collect every day. So some small things, big things. all kinds of tzaras come to people. It can be small thing. You missed your exit. Also, Neshamayim wipes off a little bit. And a big thing, people can't say, so all things people are suffering, such horrendous suffering, that wipes off some of the others. That's why the world remains in existence, because it never comes to Reb Chayiv anymore, because the Rabbanim made a shvur they will not destroy the world, and the halacha of Reb Chayiv remains that he will destroy the world. So what does he get out of it? Don't let it become Reb Chayiv. He has to stop before it gets Reb Chayiv. That's why he has all these stories that come Keseder. So the world should not become Reb Chayiv. So that's what the Gemara says. A person should always consider himself Chatzi Chayiv, Chatzi Zakai, exactly half and half, and the whole world is exactly half. That's what we have to think. Half and half. You have to something. Pechad from punkt half and half. The Gemara says normal, unless you're macham to make it half and half, it's never going to be half and half. How can punkt half and half? Not Mr. culture by mikra, by an accident, should be half and half. The teretz is it should be Reb Chayiv. We saw these affairs in the gate of the Ansel. But the bunch keeps on collecting every day. It doesn't let it come Reb Chayiv. So Mela blives half and half. Because the bunch of Kavana does not let it become Reb Chayiv. It doesn't want to destroy the world. So Mela it's very easy to be half and half. Now when the world is half and half, one mitzvah can be machriah, one avera. So, right? So if you do an avera, make it Reb, so the bunch has to immediately make a tzorah somewhere to collect it, so it shouldn't be Reb Chayiv. If you do one mitzvah, you mizaka the whole world to be Roiv Zakai. You have the power we have, a Yid has, with a mitzvah. We'll do one mitzvah. And Torah, Boidah, Hasodim, Chesed. You do Chesed with one mitzvah, if it's half and half, you can makriya the whole world of Tova. And Satan Rama, you have to think, there's punkt half and half. Right? I'm not going to be my we should learn from this mikra raw. The pasuk says in Tzvanya, "Hichati goyim akarav nations the shalom pinoisam." Pasuk Tzvanya per Gmar. Amarti achtiri oisi tichum musa. Bereshim does things. Should we have more from the Bereshim? We take musa. This is a musa lesson. This COVID-19 is a musa lesson on Klal Yisrael. We have to take musa. We felt in Yerushalayim. Bereshim, we should learn the musa said it properly, and from that we'll see that we'll become Bereshim Hatzol and Klal Yisrael. And the COVID-19 of the Mach will become COVID-19 brachas, COVID Rosh. So that now night COVID Rosh. Then had solved against Israel. So that be as Mashiach may remain Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Rosh Kollel Shlita. We would like to take this opportunity to wish the Rosh Kollel a Gmar Chasima Tova, Arichas Yamim Vishanim in good health, Menuchas HaNefesh, and a good gebenched year. On behalf of the Toronto Community Rabbonim and all of the Kehillas Kedoshis of Toronto, I would like to once again thank and express our Akaras HaTov to Harav Boleg, to the Rosh Yeshiva Rav Bender, and to Moreno, the Rosh Kollel Shlita, Rav Goyen Rav Shlomo Miller. May it be Hashem's will that we see an immediate end to all of the tzaras in Klal Yisrael, Tichla Shana V'Kilul Seah, and may we be Zoicha to a Shnas Geula of Yeshua, a Gmar Chasima Tova, and a good gebenched yor, and may we merit to reunite together in Yerushalayim HaBenuya B'mheira V'yameinu Amen.
Mul magit pesha אשר מול מגיד פשע תגיד ליעקב דבר חוק ומי ישפוט וצדקנו במשפט המלך המשפט. יזכור לנו אהבת איסור וידויננו ובבין הנקד ישפיס מדייננו Satom yoitzi yoy letzedek dineinu ki kodosh hayomoim ki kodosh